5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start. This civil suit arises out of a contractual dispute between the plaintiff and the defendant involving a written agreement for the sale of immovable property. The plaintiff has approached the court praying for specific performance of the contract and, in the alternative, for compensation due to the alleged failure of the defendant to honor his contractual obligations. The plaintiff states that the agreement was executed in good faith, with both parties consenting to the terms after due negotiation. According to the plaintiff, all essential terms, including the total sale consideration, the timeline for completion, and other formalities, were clearly defined in the written agreement. It is submitted that the plaintiff paid the agreed advance amount on the date of execution and undertook all required steps for the final transfer. The plaintiff claims that despite repeated communication and formal requests, the defendant failed to fulfill his obligation of executing the sale deed and handing over vacant possession of the property. It is further asserted that the plaintiff waited for several weeks beyond the agreed timeline, issued legal notices calling upon the defendant to perform the contract, and also offered to pay the remaining balance through a registered banking channel. The plaintiff contends that the delay was solely on part of the defendant and that the plaintiff has always remained ready and willing to perform his part of the contract. In support of the claim, the plaintiff has placed on record the agreement, proof of initial payment, and copies of correspondence exchanged between the parties. The defendant filed a written reply denying the plaintiff's allegations and stating that the agreement was not legally enforceable. The defendant submits that the document in question was only a draft proposal and was never intended to be a binding contract. It is further argued that certain conditions, such as verification of legal title, clearance of outstanding dues, and government approvals, were not fulfilled, which rendered the agreement incomplete and incapable of specific performance. The defendant has also raised an objection to the maintainability of the suit on grounds that the plaintiff suppressed material facts and misled the court. It is claimed that the plaintiff was aware of certain defects in the property's title and intentionally ignored these facts while approaching the court. The defendant denies receiving the full consideration and argues that no enforceable right arose in favor of the plaintiff under the law. In the course of the proceedings, both parties led evidence to support their respective claims. The plaintiff examined two witnesses, including an independent witness present at the time of execution, and also submitted certified copies of banking transactions showing the transfer of funds. The communication placed on record includes both email and physical notices, each addressed to the defendant, with acknowledgement of receipt. The plaintiff also produced evidence to show that he arranged for the remaining balance to be paid and obtained a no-objection certificate from the relevant municipal authority. These steps, according to the plaintiff, demonstrate consistent readiness and a sincere intention to complete the transaction. The defendant, however, did not bring any documentary evidence to show that the agreement was conditional or informal. No record was submitted to indicate that the plaintiff failed to meet any statutory requirement. The defendant also did not examine any independent witness to support the claim that the agreement was merely a draft proposal. The court also took note that the objections raised by the defendant were vague, lacking specificity and supporting proof. While the defendant argued that the agreement lacked clarity regarding timelines and title clearance, the agreement on record contains express provisions for both matters. Additionally, no alternative version of the agreement was ever produced or referenced by the defendant in the proceedings. After hearing arguments from both sides, and upon careful examination of the record, the court finds that the plaintiff has established his case with sufficient clarity. The agreement is a legally valid document, duly signed by both parties and witnessed as required. The initial payment was made and acknowledged, and there is no dispute regarding the identity of the property or the essential terms of the contract. The plaintiff's efforts to perform his obligations have been demonstrated through financial records, communications, and official clearances. The court is satisfied that the plaintiff has acted in good faith and has complied with both the letter and spirit of the agreement. On the other hand, the court finds that the defendant failed to substantiate the claim that the agreement was not enforceable. No evidence has been presented to prove that the plaintiff failed to discharge his duties or concealed material facts. The plea that the agreement was a draft and not final is not supported by any corroborative material. The allegations regarding the plaintiff's knowledge of defects in title are speculative and unsupported by official records. In the absence of substantial evidence to the contrary, the balance of probability clearly lies in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant has shown unwillingness to execute the sale deed without offering legal justification, thereby breaching the terms of the contract. The principle of specific performance is rooted in equity and is granted when the party seeking relief demonstrates willingness and capacity to perform its obligations. In this case, the plaintiff has fulfilled all criteria under the law and has shown continued interest in acquiring the said property as per the agreed terms. Monetary compensation would not adequately restore the plaintiff's position, given the uniqueness and identified purpose of the property. The court, therefore, finds it appropriate to grant the relief of specific performance as prayed for. Accordingly, the suit is decreed in favor of the plaintiff. The defendant is directed to execute the registered sale deed in respect of the subject property within a period of 60 days from the date of this judgment. The execution shall be carried out upon payment of any outstanding balance, if found due, after proper adjustment. The possession of the property shall also be handed over to the plaintiff within the same period. Stop.